Hi, guys. If you can't tell, it's a boomer day. A very boomer day. I swear to God, I am trying. Mixed results so far. Mixed results. But it should be a good day. Modern Day Debate is coming out with the banger-ass content. Excuse me. Apparently, they've been just dropping content left, right, and center, which is amazing. So, let me log into chat. There we go. Hello. Conservative liberalism says first like reporting in. True. Let me go ahead and switch over to live chat. Let me set a goal. And then I'll come hang out with you fine folk. All right. Sultan Al Fahim, good to see you, King. Good to see you, brother. How are you? Then, Agus Puig says, what's up? What's up, man? What's up, my Portuguese brother? Sultan Al Fahim says, what's happening? It didn't show the video. Is it not showing the video right now? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by showing the video. On my end, it's green, and I do have my camera up. Basically, I was already having a later day because I needed to kick my own ass out of bed at 9:30, get some caffeine, and get some medication. But then also, as I was logging into the frickin'... as I was logging in, my camera wasn't working, so then I had to restart everything and reset up my camera. So, pain in the ass. So, if something technical is going on, please let me know. Fashion 40 says, good morning, my gorillas. True. Randy Chang says, good morning, nerds. Good morning to you. Jeb Kush says, good morning. Jeb Kush, I believe, has been sharing some of his workout progress, and I'm proud of him. You got to keep grinding. You got to force yourself to do the cardio. You got to force yourself to lift the weights, although, at least for me, I've always found lifting weights substantially easier than doing the cardio. For cardio, I've given up on running completely. I know you probably can't give up on running, but I've given up on running completely, and I just walk now. So, got sick from a big event and too many children in one place. That's very normal. Fashion 40 says the video is on and the mic is working. Excellent. Jonah says, good morning. Good morning, Jonah boy. Sultan Al Fahim says, I mean, it didn't get recommended to me when I had to search it. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, we did just go live a second ago and have tech problems and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not going to blame that on anybody. Fashion 40 says, Connor, you're looking slimmer. Well, thank you. Like I said, relationship problems are great for your, caloric restrictions. When you want to go on a cut, just, get heartbroken. Just, go through a 14-year divorce and also, also date somebody for 6 weeks and then break up and then be an emotional wreck. And then you'll easily lose 10 to 15 pounds. It'll be great. So, that being said, I know I'm half joking, half bitching, but cardio, I'm not kidding. So I think a lot of us think that in order to do cardio, you have to run, you have to bike, you have to do something like that because, you don't want to be a pussy and you don't want to bitch about your knees and you don't want to bitch about running and you don't want to bitch about biking and blah, 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 blah. I've just been walking, man. I've just been walking. So, I'm not even on incline. There's a lake around me that's very nice where a lot of people aged 20 to 50 just walk around the lake every single day. We all got our headphones in, but if you want to people watch and you want to see some interesting looking people, it's not a bad place to be. And so I've been just, hey, am I still upsetty spaghetti about stuff? Let me go for a walk. And then I just pop in the headphones, listen to some music, and walk around the lake. And it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful. Ever done a D&D campaign for content? No, Hippopotaman, but truth be told, not trying to be too dour on content suggestions, but the truth is I need to be consistent with the content I'm already doing. I need to stream relatively close to on time. I need to get post-recorded content, whether that's Rhino VODs and or post-recorded cut-up VODs like Payne Arthur. So Arthur can cut shit up and put it in there. I just need to be and then also just getting out Counterpoint, Star Wars, sci-fi, and 40K out consistently. I just need to focus on that. It's not that I wouldn't. I just need more time and money than I already have. Hedonic Samuel says Lonerbox crushed this debate. I'm excited to watch it, man. I'm excited to watch it. It should be... I trust Lonerbox to be a pretty smart, cool, calm guy who's capable of throwing elbows at the right time. He's not like a aggressive boxer in that he just comes out the gate storming and just throws a bunch of punches and tries to knock the other person out. He's more like a judo guy where he takes the momentum of his opponent and then like slams them into the ground. So that, you know, I enjoy his style. I enjoy his style of debate and his personality. It's called the mail, old man. What, walking out to get the mail or the mall? I don't go to the mall. But he's been 10K step pilled. I'm not counting steps. And by the way, I think I would need to double my current walk in order to get up to 10K. I'm just walk pilled, man. Just walk pilled. Every morning, the door's open. True. Yes, walking on an incline is amazing, especially at high levels. Tech problems, boomer points, rears his ugly head. True. Jen Winkler, hello. True. Good morning, Jen Winkler. You going to cover the World War Debate Contender Series debates? I don't know, Vigilante TV. I don't know. Who participated in those? I hate to be a debate snob, especially when I've been out of the scene so long myself, but typically if I'm going to watch debate content, I want it to be a name that I recognize, just because there are a lot of terrible debaters out there. Mauricio says, hey fellas, new on the Discord, so no Warhammer here. No, Mauricio, and sorry to disappoint if you're looking for sci-fi stuff. Sometimes we'll go on like a 20-minute sci-fi rant that's totally unrelated to the content that we're watching, but this is mostly like a Twitch and YouTube political debate bro schizophrenia from a center-right moderate position, which is kind of boring for a lot of folk, but like, you know, it's fun. I think we have fun. We have a smaller community, but they're very generous. They're very kind. We have a lot of fun. We throw elbows. We talk shit. So if you're into online political autism, this is probably a great stream for you. If you're exclusively into science fiction and science fantasy, maybe 1% to 5% of our conversations are about science fiction and fantasy, and it's random. So I can't promise you any dedicated content. I'm sorry. Although I will say, if you are looking for dedicated science fiction, science fantasy content, give me a second before I lose Mauricio. Let me show. So I think it was today or yesterday. Yeah, yesterday, I released the Aldani Heist Part 2. Normally, I post this on my Warhammer 40K content, like my post page, so people can go check it out. But if you like Star Wars, go check that out. And then also with Counterpoint Sci-Fi, last week, Counterpoints Sci-Fi... Excuse me. Last week, I released the end of the Battle of Aya. I need to post this on my Counterpoints 40K channel too. But this is pretty much like the end of season 2.75. Or the end of season 2. Where the Battle of Io is won. And the crew of the Rocinante saves Mars from imminent genocide. So. Anyways. Thank you for the donation. Kicking us off. Give me 1 second. Who is this? Fellrunner, thank you, King. With a 20, here's some raw, unprocessed time for the coffers. Thank you. Thank you. I literally had to see if you were saying coffee. Mauricio says you're not losing me, mate. Be at ease, lol. Ha! Brave last words. Brave final words, Mauricio. Vigilante says, me, Radish, Teriak, Big Nick, Owlish, Kung Fu Joe, Marte, Given Lawrence, JSU, Bama Ventures. Those are the names that participated that you might know. That's funny. I might need to take a look at that just because that sounds schizophrenic as hell. I know Keriak. I think I know Nick. I know Owlish. Yeah, that could be fun. That could be fun. Also, is anyone keeping up with the DARPA Heavy Lift Challenge? No. I'm not keeping up with the DARPA Heavy Lift Challenge. Please tell me more. How has Starship not won the DARPA Heavy Lift Challenge? What I mean by that is they can transport 300,000 tons across the planet in 90 minutes. Now, if you're talking about something else, I'd appreciate some details. Fashion 40, a full year. Nice, man. Thank you. I knew there were some 12-month membership renewals coming up, man. That's awesome. Thank you so much. August. Nice. We started this little project in April of last year, so I'm happy that we got some people who came on a few months into the channel hitting the 12-month memberships. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Also, thank you for the chip. $5 for the bigger chip. Thank you, King. Well, QC John says, good morning, girl hottest. True. I should probably say the prayer. What's the prayer? May your grill stay hot. May your beer stay cold. May you keep all your fingers while blowing things up. Amen. Indeed. Thank you, Brother Chaplain. Well, and QC John. I caught this debate last night. Surprisingly, Rob was really good faith and didn't even run weaponized contextual ignorance more than 40 to 50 times. Really held himself back. Crap says, please explain the story behind the crossbow on the shelf. Okay. Yeah, sure. I guess I could do that real quick. So when I was getting out of law enforcement, a majority of my firearms were, how do I say that? They were government issued. I had a government issued AR-15. I had a government issued shotgun. I had a government issued Glock. And I turned those all back in. And I was trying to decompress from law enforcement and from the military. And so I got rid of my weapons for a little bit. I gave my firearms to a family member and was just kind of like, all right, I'm just not going to think about violence or death or injury for a while. And so I took a few months from off from gun ownership. And then I didn't want the firearms back necessarily, but I wanted something that if some rapscallion broke into my house, I would have an answer for them. I didn't want the explosive immediacy and lethality of firearms, but I still wanted something to say, ooh, you rapscallion, get out of my house, and then, hit him with something. And so what I landed on, I did some research. That's an AR-6 Stinger crossbow. It's a 6-shot magazine-fed, top-loaded crossbow. And so basically, if some rapscallion came into my house for the first 3 to 6 months that I was out of law enforcement, instead of being cut down with a bolter or a Glock, they would have been cut down, or at least they would have been punctured with a 6-shot crossbow. So weirdly enough, it's a similar crossbow. It's by the same manufacturer as the guy who tried to kill Nick Fuentes. It's the same manufacturer for the crossbow. All right. Well, QC John with the prayer. Thank you, King. Fell Runner with the pinned Patreon. True. If you want to support me on a month-to-month basis, you can go to patreon.com/counterpoints. Just do $2, $5, $10, whatever, and just let that ride. That's another way to support us. Truth and Decency came in order to tell us that gay people are gross. Thanks for being schizophrenic enough to show up to the channel multiple times on separate alts to tell us your opinions on gay people. eDreamcast says, hello, Connor. How are you? I'm okay. Copperino says, sent goat for 1,000 jewels. Thank you, King. Appreciate you. Thoughts on Charlie XCX? Who is Charlie XCX? Is that a pornographic actor or a YouTuber? I don't know. Hold on, give me a second. Charlie XCX. If she's of age and she was single, I would hang out with her. I don't know what you're asking me. Is she a musical artist? What is happening? I don't know what's happening. Why is the thumbnail scuffed? Dude, you guys always bitch about the thumbnail. The thumbnail can either be the consistent thumbnail for a long time has been me in the Destiny debate chair looking at him skeptically. And then I just downloaded 3 other random pictures that I thought were funny. One of them was me in a go-kart. One of them was me looking very disappointed at chat. And one of them is me doing a slutty selfie in the mirror. So, what do you want? What do you want? Crossbow looks like a Nerf gun. Well, probably doesn't feel like a Nerf gun. Connor wants to delete Nick Fuentes. What? No, it wasn't me. There was just a guy who went to Nick Fuentes' house. I think he got killed by law enforcement. He went to Nick Fuentes' house with a pistol and a crossbow, and the crossbow that he had was the same manufacturer as the one I have. So, no, I'm not Fed posting about Nick. Rob used you in this debate as an example. The people who call Trump fascist are only doing it to defend attempts on his life. Oh, my God, what a pussy. Laugh my ass off. Exactly, that's what I thought when I first heard of Charlie. What's the difference between the Patreon and the channel membership? Nothing. Patreon, I keep a little bit bigger of the cut. I think Patreon only takes between like 2 and 10% of the revenue. I think that YouTube takes like 30%, but then obviously with 30%, you get the creator interaction of I actively see your donation live and I can say, hey, thanks for the donation. You know what I'm saying? So, what are your thoughts on Steven crashing out over just a few DSA people winning? He and Wick are starting to sanewash MAGA over it. It's crazy how this all takes for people to abandon beliefs. I've had a good time, not gonna lie, because I feel like for the past year, I don't think the crash out is warranted. Matter of fact, I should pull up a drawing for you, and we should probably start content momentarily. But the so with the DSA people winning, okay, I want to point this out, and I want to show that I've drawn it so you guys know that I'm not crashing out as hard as Destiny or Wick, okay? Hold on. Wait a minute. All right. So, 33% of Democrats now identify as democratic socialists, which is alarming considering the most prominent online democratic socialist commentator is Hassan Piker, who is a tanky LARPer fucking loser who I wish I could kick square in his fucking testicles. However, I think that most people who are identifying as democratic socialists are listening more to AOC and Bernie Sanders than they are to Rashida Tlaib or Hassan Piker. And what they probably want is universal health care, affordable housing, affordable food, emphasis on labor and workers' rights, police reform and anti-police brutality legislation, and affordable transportation, similar to what Mamdani ran on in New York. Now, what's insane about the Democratic Socialists is that they will say, okay, yeah, these are what we'll do right now, but long term, we want the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production, defund and abolish police and prisons, tanky apologia for Soviet and Maoist Russia, support for Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas as anti-imperialist forces, open and anti-border rhetoric, and everyone is a fascist except for socialists, right? These are the lunatics. I'm not saying that's all of them. I'm saying these are the lunatics who go on the internet and make everyone's lives annoying. Now, if you're asking me what is likely with 30% of the Democratic Party turning DSA, I think there is a 2% chance, meaning a very low percent chance, less than 5%, less than 10%, that tankies will take over the United States, resulting in a corruption and destruction of the American empire, resulting in overwhelming loss of power and human life through incompetent stupidity, command economics, authoritarian PC policing, using UK-style social media bullshit, and AI cameras. It's something that we need to fight. It's something that we need to criticize. Whenever it rears its ugly head, we need to bully the shit out of these people on the internet. But I think the chances of Americans actually tolerating that as the future of this country is very low. Now, What I do think that Democratic Socialists and tanky LARPers take over 30% of the Democratic Party, and they're obstructive to the Democratic Party itself and are used as villains by Republicans, but they are effectively the Labor Party of the United States, putting in labor and police brutality laws when electorally feasible, but all their anti-imperialism and economic reforms are 2% actually policy and 98% LARPing bullshit. In order to pander to this loud and annoying base, Democrats become even more cringe than the late 2010s and early 2020s. This is what I think is going to happen. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't, like, fight it. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be angry about it. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't call our fellow citizens ableist slurs. I'm just trying to show you that I'm actually, like, sane enough to recognize that even if the Democratic Socialists take over a substantial amount of the Democratic Party, their impact will probably be muted by the system. Right? Anyways. Dumpster Buzzard with the 5. Thank you, King. I never saw anyone sane wash MAGA. I only saw people rightfully declare that some Republicans are better choices than DSA. True. And I appreciate Mooten for doing so. I'm actually like I think Mooten is a secret cogger. I think he's a community of Grill Hottest member, whether he knows it or not. What's funny is when I and North said the same thing 6 months ago, he basically said that we were like fair weather friends and allies, that he shouldn't trust us and that we could go fuck ourselves because we're not a part of the left-wing tent. And then now that the DSA has taken over like a few House seats and 30% of Democrats are openly identifying as Democratic Socialists, now all of a sudden he actually has the identical position of North and I, that a moderate Republican is preferable to a DSA member. It's pretty fucking funny. Like, I'm a huge fan of it. So I know Svalin was saying, like, oh, I don't like Wick and Destiny freaking the fuck out. So, but you understand, just to make it clear, I agree with Wick, Destiny, and Mooten. I'm just not freaking the fuck out about it because I've seen this developing for a decade, you know? In 4 years, the NSDAP went from 3% of the vote to over 30%, and they ended up having the biggest coalition, and they went full fascist. For sure. And we should be sober about reality. I just don't think that... I just don't think there's enough Americans that are, like, commie dipshits for that to happen. Now, here's famous last words. If you asked me if Americans were fucking dumb enough to fall for MAGA a year before Donald Trump got elected, I would have said, no, there's no way that we're that stupid. But, you know, maybe we are that stupid. Hi, Lactoid. Good to see you. Do you actually think Trump is a fascist? If so, when do you begin thinking this? Oh, I've thought this for like a year. I think he's too stupid to actually understand political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism. But he absolutely governs as a fascist. Can I show you my penis drawing real quick? As a fascist expert. Where's my penis drawing? God damn it, I have too many drawings. Here we go. Found it. All right, Lactoid, stay right there. I need to show you my penis drawing. So, fascism is two things. Political corporatism, which, by the way, I'm a political corporatist, and flexible authoritarianism. I'm not a flexible authoritarian. Okay? So, just to give you an analogy for political corporatism, you analogize the nation state into a human body or a body. The government is the brain, the economy is the heart, the skin is the military, the bones are the culture, the white blood cells are law enforcement, the digestive tract are the hospice asylums and public hospitals, the testes are training, education, and academia, and the penis is pronatal cultural conservatism that propagates the society. And so you analogize the nation state not into a series of individuals who are all competing for power within the structure. Yeah, DSA is a kidney stone. True. DSA is Taco Bell lettuce. Absolutely. So, the point is that you analogize the nation state into this conception, and then you advocate for its corporative health, right? You try to maximize the economy, you try to maximize the government, you maximize the military, maximize the culture, et cetera, and then you also deal with cancers and parasites. Now, the problem with political corporatism is that oftentimes political corporatists analogize rival ethno-religious groups within a society into viruses, cancers, and vermin worthy of extermination. You know, they basically say the Jews are a cancer, or the Jews are AIDS, or the blacks are tumors, or some shit, right? That's the problem with political corporatism as a conception, is it dehumanizes people and turns them into viruses and cancer. Now, the flexible authoritarianism is the other half of fascism, which basically says your job is, as a political operative, is to accumulate power at whatever cost possible. So if there's an institution that's in your way, if it's liberal democracy, if it's the monarchy, if it's the parliament, if it's the whatever, then you either bend it to your will or you ignore it outright in the pursuit of power. And then once you achieve power, you're supposed to advocate in the political corporative good. But the truth is, what ends up happening is nepotism, because the only people who matter are the people who have the will to power similar to you, where they're willing to corrupt and destroy what stands in their way in their own pursuit of power. It's literally Sith philosophy. I think George Lucas unironically looked at fascism and he's like, I'm going to turn fascism into a religion. And that was the Sith religion from Star Wars. Miradol, thank you for the membership. Appreciate you. Old school with the 5. Connor calls Trump a fascist while Connor yearns to serve and die for the God Emperor. Yeah, because the God Emperor is a relatively just God. And also, humanity is facing a extinction level event. So if we were facing an extinction level event, and there was a fascist dictator who prevented the full extinction of the species, yeah, 100% I would be a fascist. But we're not facing an existential level threat as a species. So, as a matter of fact, I think that's why Donald Trump relies on existential language consistently, is because he's trying to gin up that sentiment of, we're on the precipice of apocalypse. You must give me as much power as possible, or we're all going to be raped, murdered, and in a ditch. So, and the situation dynamic has worsened. True. eDreamcast says, to be honest, in my opinion, either Mamdani and the other do a terrible job, or they will take over the Dem establishment. So it's either them or hopefully Rubio, but it's probably Vance. So it's a lose-lose situation. Correct. If it's a DSA presidential nominee, if it's AOC versus Vance, I'm not voting. If it's AOC versus Rubio, I'm voting Rubio. If it's AOC, well, actually, hold on, I already did that one. If it's Newsom versus Rubio, I'm probably doing Newsom. It's all a calculation of like what stabilizes our country. So I'm on board with all this, but can we do it without agreeing with known liar Wick TV? Yeah, but don't do that whole binary thing. If Nick Fuentes or Wick TV say the sky is blue, then the sky's still blue. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to do that whole thing where it's like, this person lies, therefore I can never agree with them about anything. That is fucking goofy shit. Lactoid says, do you make any distinction between a group that is legitimately detestable and worthy of oppression and a group that is not when it comes to your determination of a government being fascist? Yeah, I still think fascism is playing, at least for now, is playing within the game of liberalism. So, like similar to communists, I've been over this, Lactoid, and sorry if I'm repeating myself if you've heard this before. But basically, if somebody was immigrating to the United States and they were self-identified as a political fascist or communist, I think they should be barred from the United States of America. They should not be allowed in. Their politics are contrary to the American political project. But if they're a native citizen, if they're born here, they have the right to be a communist or a fascist and participate within electoral politics. So, you know, I just have to trust that liberal republicanism, liberal democracy, is strong enough to deal with fascist and socialist antagonists. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I don't think, like, fascists should have their free speech rights revoked. I think they should be checked by the courts and the legislature, right? If our fucking legislature had any balls right now, they would be impeaching Donald Trump. But unfortunately, they don't have the balls right now, so we have to wait until he's a lame duck. MH says, and the problem is that the right is not going to moderate. There are no signs of that at all. Most conservatives who oppose Trump do so because he isn't extreme enough. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe a Democratic victory in 2028 will stem their extremity. We'll see. Miradol says AOC is so much better than Vance. Come on. Yeah, she's hotter. It's true. But this is like, just being real, this is like me asking you to vote for a Democratic fascist. You know what I'm saying? Do you understand that? Like you can say on the measure of harms and where we are as a country, it's clear that AOC will have a more positive impact than Vance. And you might even be correct. But I think the same way that if there was like an extreme, let's say like Hassan Piker was legitimately running for president, and there was a Democratic fascist. Nick Fuentes was running as a moderate, even though he was a Democratic fascist. And I was like, listen, guys, Nick Fuentes is clearly the better option to Hassan Piker. I think you're going to have some problems checking that box on your ticket. You know what I'm saying? Oh, nameless henchman. What would we do without you? What would we do without you saying that everybody to the right of Joe Biden is a fascist? What would we do? Did we just put Wick and Fuentes on the same level? Yeah. Todd Blanche getting through seems a little scary. It is. I will be okay with Todd Blanche getting through as long as the thing that ostensibly has happened in the past 24 hours actually happened. If he actually killed the $1.8 billion slush fund for January 6 rioters, and if he actually rescinded the perpetual immunity of the Trump family against tax investigations, then I'm okay with him moving forward. What the fuck? Everybody has to go live now? Well, pick your favorite streamer, you son of a bitch. Voting for Vance. That said, he would certify the elections on January 6th. You can hate AOC, but she is not that bad. I will give you AOC is not preferable, but Vance is worse. Yeah, sure. Sure. I think I already agreed to that. Lactoid says, I don't think it was clear. Let me give an example. I think that PDFs are a virtuous tumor within a broader healthy society, corporatism, and two, I want to oppose them, authoritarian. Am I fascist? No. 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 Nope. No. So flexible authoritarian is the thing that you want to that I want you to differentiate, Lactoid. So for instance, like a Republican, somebody who believes in the rule of law, in criminalizing some level of social behavior, they're also going to be for the oppression of pedophiles. So for instance, like I would I ban Lolicon? I might ban Lolicon. If I was dictator of America, well, actually, let's not even do dictator. If it was possible to criminalize drawn depictions of sex acts with children and then prosecute people who possessed said thing, let's just use that as an example. If I passed that through the legislature and then law enforcement enforced the law, I would be a Republican, not a fascist, right? Because I'm using the levers of representative democracy in order to achieve that end. However, if I ignored the legislature, ignored the Bill of Rights, ignored rulings from the Supreme Court of the United States saying that I was prohibited from persecuting pedophiles, and then I just went on a liquidation campaign against pedophiles because there was enough popular sentiment that I could gin up a mob and a militia to liquidate the pedophiles, then I would be, at minimum, acting like a fascist, if not actually a fascist. I need to debate Lactoid TV. I'm happy to debate Lactoid TV. Lactoid is, we disagree quite viciously on a lot of shit, but I actually find him to be earnestly expressing his beliefs, and that's refreshing in this space. Yeah. Jay says anyone supporting AOC is an absolute moron who shouldn't be voting. Well, I support only Aryan AOC. If AOC dyes her hair blonde and puts in blue contacts, I'll vote for her. Yeah. Zale says Fuentes and Hassan are both rather irredeemable, bad examples in my opinion. Truth is, most people that are claiming communist aren't even getting commandeered into the Hassan type revolutionary delusion. Yeah. I showed that picture earlier. I think it's just going to be, it's going to be very annoying. I'm still going to criticize the fuck out of these people. But if I had to bet dollars to donuts, if there was going to be a LARPing tanky revolution in the United States, or if we were going to develop a caucus of the Democratic Party that was going to be like Labor, I think we're infinitely more likely to develop a Democratic caucus similar to Labor in Australia and the United Kingdom than we are to have a tanky take over the United States. MH says that was such a dumb argument, Lactoid, having laws against pedophiles isn't fascist. Yeah, but that's not his argument. What he's trying to say is, what's the line, in my opinion. I think Lactoid's perfectly capable of understanding this shit. Because, no offense, lefties and liberals, like Nameless Henchmen, they blur the line where any kind of right-wing authoritarian move is considered fascist because it's to the right of Joe Biden. You know what I'm saying? So this is why I don't like Nameless Henchman's rhetoric, because I don't think it actually captures what's going on politically. Wick is nothing more than a content source that calls Connor evil as a prescription to the community beef. I'm not sure why Cog needs to care beyond that. Has Wick called me evil? That is very silly. That is beyond silly. If he's ever used the term evil in reference to me, that is silly goofs. That is very silly goose. All right. Anyways, he called me evil. That's retarded. That's very dumb. That is very dumb. My position. Well, dude, no, I haven't been watching. No, I didn't watch fucking. I haven't watched any of that shit. That's retarded. Okay. Doing a little bit of snarking myself, okay? Sexting a married woman and masturbating to the idea of molesting her children and masturbating to the idea of her molesting your children is gross and repugnant and vile. And it's indicative of a level of recklessness that I find unconscionable. Calling that out is my duty, in my opinion. If he thinks calling out that behavior is evil, I think he's lost the fucking plot. I don't think he understands reality anymore. That is very silly goose. That is wildly silly goose. All right. Anyways. Well, moving on. Let's get the debate content going. That's silly pants. That is very silly pants. Oh. Oh. All right.
And things of that. Who denigrate
with you up to the podium.
As a fascist. In this,
if you're okay with holding.
God damn, Lonerbox is tall. I remembered that Lonerbox was tall when we were hanging out, I think in Cincinnati. I knew he was tall, but holy shit is he tall. Good hugger, too. I think we gave each other a bro hug. I think it was a good bro hug.
it.
All right. Let's do a little intro. Let's get a little debate content in. Also, somebody said that this thumbnail is scuffed. I think this thumbnail is beautiful. Are you shitting me? That's literally how I feel whenever I interact with Twitch and YouTube politics. All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to Counterpoints. My name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, politics, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran. I would argue a real Republican. I'm trying to be a Rhino, a Republican who is honest, has integrity, nuance, and objectives. And today we're going to be snarking some MAGA. We got some MAGA snark coming in. For those of you who don't know, we got Lonerbox. He's a progressive, I think from Scotland. I think he's Lebanese, Scottish or something. He lives in the United Kingdom. And then we have Noerr, who was a Trump sycophant rolling into the 2024 election and has since been extremely disappointed by the Trump administration because the Trump administration became everything that we predicted it was going to become. They were going to F up the mass deportation. They were going to violate the Constitution of the United States in reference to, respecting the Bill of Rights, the 4th, 8th, and 14th Amendment. They were going to screw up geopolitics and the international bullshit. They were going to be authoritarian and Orwellian and this, that, the other. And so as a result, I told you so, you dumb fuck. I fucking told you so. So let's watch Lonerbox and Mr. Rob Noerr debate whether or not Trump is a fascist. It should be fun.
Or you could bring your stand-up.
Yeah, I'll bring this. This stand's too low, though.
It might be better to hold it if you're okay with it.
Being tall.
Too tall for these things as well. That fine? Okay. So, when I was first asked to do this debate, my first thought was, I am a Scottish person being flown halfway across the world to tell a bunch of Americans, sounds like mostly right-wingers, that their president is a fascist. And that sounds good. That sounds like there's nothing, like a European coming to America to tell conservatives that their president's a fascist. In this security environment, well, fascism is one of those words that is probably like one of the quickest conversation stoppers that you can get in any debate. And not many words really have that power. Pretty much ever since 1945, fascism's association with atrocities of World War II has basically made it a term that is universally inspiring revulsion. Today, fascist is all too often just used as a cheap swipe. Trump has been called a fascist by many people, including former allies and one or two current allies, but even I would concede that not everyone who calls him a fascist is doing it for the right reason. Every other academic work that you read about fascism includes the author's despair that the terms have been butchered, not least of all by Trump himself, who called Kamala Harris a fascist at least 4 times during his election campaign in 2024. But we forget that the images we mostly associate with fascism are from the end of the road. Hitler did not come to power promising World War II and the Holocaust, and Mussolini's famous doctrine of fascism didn't get outlined until 10 years after he was in power. If either of them had been fully upfront about what they wanted, they would have failed. My point is that fascism couldn't get as far as it did without appealing to a wide mass of very ordinary people. Although their electoral success is often overstated, the Nazis never won more than 37% of the vote in a fair and free election. Their growth was fast, and it captured people from all sides. It captured urban workers, as well as a decent amount of bosses. It captured monarchists, disaffected liberals, religious people, atheists. It was very successful with farmers, and it did surprisingly well with women. And they did this in one of the most advanced countries on earth. And what I'm more interested in is not how fascism looked at the very end, but how it succeeded with all those people to begin with. Whether we like it or not, fascism was part of the modern world. It appealed to people who weren't all that different from us, and the more you learn about them, the more you can benefit from seeing their patterns of thought and behavior being repeated today, whether the people doing so are aware of it or not. Fascism needs to be rescued from bad usage, not abandoned because of it. And we definitely don't need to drop it just because it's complicated. I mean, look at the word liberal. We're in the United States, where I've been watching Fox News since I was a teenager. Liberal here seems to mean everything from an establishment, moderate, reach across the aisle Democrat, all the way over to socialists and communists. In Europe, when we say liberal, we mean people who promote laissez-faire capitalism. Liberal in Europe has mostly, for the last 40 years, meant like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. Fascism is not that complicated. So, what is fascism? I'm going to define it as more of a political behavior. And for the purpose of the debate, I'm going to say that there are three main pillars that are essential to that kind of behavior. One, authoritarian. Trump doesn't like elections. In 2012, when Obama got reelected in a landslide, he called for a revolution in his country. He said, quote, "We can't let this happen. We should march on Washington and stop this travesty. Our nation is totally divided." Even after, long after the race was called, he said, "Let's fight like hell and stop this great and disgusting justice." When he lost the Iowa caucus to Ted Cruz in 2016, he called it a steal and said that Cruz's results should be nullified. In 2016, he also warned that the results would be rigged, and even after he won, he denied Hillary's win in the popular vote, blaming it on illegal immigrants. In 2020, months before the election, he predicted, in all caps, millions of mail-in ballots will be printed by foreign countries and others. It will be the scandal of our times. Printed by foreign countries. The second would be populism. Most traditional dictators are not fascist. They don't see themselves at odds with some kind of hostile establishment within. They are the establishment, and they know it. What's interesting about Hitler and Mussolini is that even when they had huge amounts of control, they were always in conflict with the traditional conservative elite that helped them come into power. Even during the war, Hitler couldn't do everything he wanted, and Mussolini was even more constrained by judges, the church, businessmen, civil servants, and of course the monarchy. Both of them had to deal with the dread of experts. Hitler's administration was famously full of people who were completely unqualified for their roles. His foreign minister's only experience was selling fake champagne to the United Kingdom. His head of labor was a chemistry graduate. He had a literary enthusiast in charge of all of Vienna. Himmler's specialty was agriculture. When Trump announced his cabinet picks, I seem to remember the media very, very aggressively talking about how unqualified everyone was. Hegseth was
30 seconds.
Sorry?
30 seconds.
Oh, okay, shit.
Well, if Rob's
I'll
open
say
to-
all this in the middle, it's okay.
we can give you an extension if Rob's open to it.
You give me an extension? You're so kind, Rob, thank you. Where was I?
Aw, that's sweet and good faith. The reason why I like my definition over what has happened so far, though, is because political corporatism, while it takes more than a few sentences to explain, I think it's relatively intuitive. I think flexible authoritarianism is also understandable if you want to understand it. So, right now, sorry, I'll try to be as brief as I can. I'm a guy raised in a society that has rules. I have to obey the laws unless I want to get incarcerated. If I want political power, I need to either become a commentary person in media, and I need to climb up through popularity and money, or I need to go through our electoral system, at which point I also need money and popularity. That is like inherent in our democracy, is that if you want power, you can't just grab a sword or a gun, walk around pointing it at people's faces and say, I'm in charge of you now, right? So, if I want power, I have to play the game. But once I seize power, once I have money, once I have popularity, once I have institutional control, that's when I can bend things to my will. And so a fascist has no respect for Republican principles or democracy or monarchy or any of that shit just because it existed previously, right? If an institution can be co-opted in order to enhance your own power, awesome. If an institution is trying to deny your power, it either needs to be destroyed or it needs to be ignored. And that's like, flexible authoritarianism. You just pursue power for the sake of power so you can bend society to your will. Doobie says, Wick is a spineless midwit rat man who will end up alone and unaccomplished. His only saving grace is that he'll be the last of his line. Who cares what he thinks? Also, I predict an unfortunate LB win. LB? Lonerbox? Why is Oh, because Lonerbox is a filthy Zionist, but I can separate that from other stances. Yeah, Lonerbox is a smart cookie, man, and he's a good guy. I don't understand Lonerbox hate. I really don't.
Hegseth was a major infantry officer turned Fox News host who became Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, Linda McMahon for Secretary of Education, Rick Perry for Secretary of Energy, a department that he once promised to eliminate, RFK for Public Health. I remember wondering, do you think any of his supporters care if these people were unqualified? And I would say no. It's not just that these people are loyal. People will say that Trump chooses people like that just because he values loyalty and nothing else. No, it's deeper than that. He values what he sees as authenticity. He doesn't trust the expert class. He doesn't trust anything that he sees as the establishment. They're different from him. He himself is obviously not really like a qualified politician. That was the same thing with Hillary. Look how qualified I am. Look how unqualified Trump is. Didn't matter. And they like that. Sometimes it means he says some goofy things like saying that Syria should take charge of security in Lebanon, which, if you know anything about either of those two countries, is kind of insane. But for that reason, old school dictators didn't really want fans. They'd rather that people just quietly accept them, or in some cases, not even talk about them. Fascists are the opposite. Their political action depends on firing up their support base, and this also means that their actions...
Sorry, we need to pause this real quick. I hate Lonerbox because he committed an aquatic genocide against horses. I agree, That was the wildest shit. We were watching Lonerbox play World of Warcraft, and he kept like riding in order to kill sea dragons or some shit so he could harvest some kind of resource. But every time he rode into like the area where he could harvest the sea dragons, he fucking drowned his horse. Like he ran his horse into the water, jumped off, and started slaughtering sea creatures. And, you know, from an outside perspective, it looked wildly unethical. Absolutely.
Policy moves need to be exciting. One author said that fascism is more of a set of mobilizing passions than a fully articulated philosophy. Hitler downplayed his anti-Semitism when he started gaining electoral success. In a very short space of time, he went from making anti-communism his priority to taking a radical stance against big businesses and even supporting a rail workers' strike in Berlin, and then back to murdering communists and purging his own party of the socialists of National Socialism. Trump doesn't really talk about banning Muslims anymore. He spoke about Haitians eating cats and dogs for about 2 days. Then it was Somalis. I guess he's probably a bit preoccupied with Iran right now. But I don't think anyone would disagree that Trump and his supporters see themselves as the authentic American people standing against a corrupt and out-of-touch establishment, Republicans and Democrats alike. Even when he's in power, I don't think people realize that when Trump does that, he's doing something that fascists have done all the way throughout. Even as dictators, fascists were at odds with the old conservative establishment, which remained a thorn in their side until the war. The third pillar is a revivalist nationalism. Fascism is often described as a kind of ultranationalism, and obviously nationalism will change a lot because every nation is different, it has a different story, they have different values. But for fascism, there is one very common theme. It's an obsession with national decline, humiliation, and victimhood. For Hitler, it was Versailles and the stab in the back myth. For Mussolini, it was the mutilated victory. For Trump, it's interesting because this national humiliation happened twice. When I first heard MAGA, I thought, okay, it sounds like he's talking about the 1950s. Maybe some of his supporters think 1850s. It was vague, but it was referring to some kind of ideal. In the 2024 campaign, MAGA just meant his last presidency. You can look back at the campaign. He just started talking about how great America was 5 or 6 years ago. So it's maybe a bit less spicy than the 1930s, but when Trump talks about America as a nation that isn't being taken seriously, when he places enormous tariffs on over 100 countries while holding up a board with a bunch of numbers that came from a formula that has nothing to do with tariffs and claiming that this is America reclaiming its dignity from Mozambique, then he's kind of doing a similar thing, just in its own way. Is Trump a fascist? Yeah.
Thank you very much for that opening. With that, we'll kick it over to Rob for his opening statement as well.
I get to struggle.
Got the timer set for you, Rob.
Okay, before he continues, though, political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism. So for me, he took longer, which isn't a problem, to say what I was saying in more words that still haven't made it solid. He said that the things that make fascism fascism are authoritarianism. Well, there's plenty of authoritarian governments that aren't fascist. Populism, appealing to the masses. Okay. I guess that most fascists have been populist. Cronyism. Well, there's plenty of societies that are crony, that have cronyism or nepotism. I would argue even liberalism has a substantial amount of cronyism and liberalism, particularly in America. Then, what he kind of did say was that there's a political corporatist mentality against internal corruption and outside groups. So, when Trump says, oh, our leaders are feckless and our experts are dumb and all that kind of stuff, he's trying to appeal to a rot within the political corporative identity. Like our brain isn't working properly, our nervous system isn't working properly, our white blood cells aren't working properly, right? That's what he's appealing to, a rot or a cancer within the political corporative body. Then, when he's talking about revitalist nationalism or the identification of exterior groups like Haitians or Muslims or whatever, that is also a part of political corporatism, because you're effectively identifying Muslim, Haitian, Somali, Hispanic immigrants as not truly authentically a part of the political corporative body. They are members from rival political corporative bodies and are therefore more analogous to a virus or a cancer. Right? Conscious, unconscious, doesn't really matter. That is the mentality that he's appealing to. And so for me, political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism capture all of the ideas that Lonerbox articulated more succinctly. Of course, it takes longer to explain, but if you understand it, I think it captures fascism quite accurately. Anyways.
Rob,
Do you know how much time I have?
7 minutes.
Okay. All right, check. All right, everyone, thank you. What was with that low energy shit? Am I right? Well, let's champ it up a little. It's a party, yeah. Thank you. Now, before we get started, I have to say, I don't know if Jay Dyer's here. What's up, Modern Day Debate? Why'd Jay get more beverages than me? I think that's some shit. I think we could unionize here, more beverages. So I thought maybe it was his hat game. So we'll go with Jay Dyer. It doesn't fit very well, so I'm gonna immediately backtrack from that. Well, I've lost already. Before we start, I just want to say thank you so much, James, Modern Day Debate, everyone that's here. You guys are the best. But special thanks to you, Lonerbox. I know that we switched who you were debating, and regardless of the beating I'm about to give you, I do really appreciate it. From the bottom, I really do. It's really cool. It's not easy to switch when you've planned, so I do appreciate that. So let's get to the boring stuff first. Definition of fascism. Here's the framework for how to view this debate. I'm going to give you a definition of fascism. I'm going to prove that that definition is superior, and that under that definition, Trump is not a fascist. But if you're a delusional lefty that's here with Lonerbox or Destiny, you might say, actually, we're going to go with Lonerbox's definition. So I will prove under Lonerbox's definition why Trump is not a fascist. And then we'll talk about important things. So first, let's start with the boring stuff. My definition is going to come from Roger Griffin's 1991 book, The Nature of Fascism. And fascism is going to have 3 parts. Now, the first part is that it is populist. I will argue in both of our definitions when it comes to populism. The problem is going to be that every modern political campaign in the world is populist. Name me one campaign in any country that you could think of that is remotely effective, that doesn't speak to the importance of the people and giving the people power and distrusting wealthy people or distrusting, some sort of oligarchy or elite. So, one thing I want you to remember, if everything is fascism, then nothing is fascism. And what you'll see is, with these definitions, especially in the way that Lonerbox is applying them, we're going to see that it would mean that so many of these movements of the specific things they're talking about would fall into the category of fascism. The second thing that is a criteria for Griffin for fascism is that it has to be palingenetic. Now, paleogenetic is just a fancy term that means the vision of a radical new beginning which follows a period of destruction or perceived dissolution. So picture Mussolini, right? He's a fascist. He wasn't a reformer. He wasn't saying, let's go back to what our politics were 60 years ago. He was saying he literally wanted Romans with like the SPQR tattoo driving around in like Benzes and things like that. He literally wanted the destruction of the country to go back to a time before the country. Now, does that sound like Trump? No. Trump is a reformer. Even Lonerbox said, he said, well, maybe it was going to 1950s or 1850s, and now it's just about going back to the last election. Trump's not suggesting that we go back to some puritanical time like before the founding fathers to what the country is. He's saying that Make America Great Again was a time where we had more Christian values, where we had more secure elections, where we had manufacturing in this country, where we had strong, robust, hard, and soft power around the world. That's what he's talking about, not a radical destruction. Because of that, it's clear that Trump, not being paleogenetic, would not be a fascist. And remember, in both mine and Lonerbox's definition, you'll have to meet all three criteria in order to be a fascist. So if I could prove in either of these definitions that there is a part of it that Trump doesn't meet, he's not a fascist. The third is, and it's very similar to what Lonerbox says, ultranationalism. He says that it's revivalist nationalism, but it means the same thing. His author is going to be this guy, Robert Paxton. That's where he's getting most of this stuff. Paxton talks specifically about the term ultranationalism. What he's referring to there is the idea that the country is above everything. It's above you. It's above your family. It's above your church. It's above your business. Does that sound like Donald Trump? Does Donald Trump sound like a guy that's doing things like demanding compulsory military service, demanding compulsory civic service, regulating industry, which is one of the first things that Mussolini did, because he saw as these industries are profiting themselves and not for the national good. So he starts to put this corporatist mindset where they're nationalizing these industries in order to have these regulations. Now, if I asked you, geez, ultranationalism, part of that is regulating our economy and having strict regulations on businesses. Is there one person in this room that'd say, yeah, that sounds like Trump, pro-regulation? Trump is one of the most anti-regulatory presidents in my lifetime. In fact, because of the justices he appointed and him arguing in front of the court, or his team, we got rid of Chevron deference, which was allowing the executive agencies to actually create law to have these burdensome regulations on business for the national good. In fact, I will argue in both my definition and Lonerbox's definition, the modern left, particularly the more progressive left, actually meets these definitions far better than Trump does. Who would you think of as regulating industry for the national good? Who would you think of talking about populism and the fact that there's systemic racism, all the systems are racist? Who does that sound like to you? And paleogenetic, who wants to return to a world that was sort of pre-race and give the land back to Native Americans and things of that? Who denigrates our foundational documents more than the modern left?
Oh, God, kill me now. Yep. Chat's already popping off exactly with what I was. We got the tariff regime. We got the, and by the way, you don't even have to accept that like protectionism is inherently fascist, right? That's not even necessarily what's being said. Okay, if you think political corporatism is the regulation and induction of corporations into the state, unfortunately, there's going to be like Googleable definitions that back up that perspective that that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about analogizing the nation state into a fucking body. And by the way, let's say that you have cramped muscles, okay? I think I said that the cardiovascular system is the economy. So let's say that Trump views the cardiovascular system of the economy as being too restricted, and therefore he's advocating for the political corporative health of the nation state. And then he says, I'm going to go ahead and increase blood flow through modifications to the cardiovascular system. That's still political corporatism. So it's not inherently protectionist. It's not inherently the government taking over. Weirdly enough, I talked to Cultured Thug, who's like a fascist fucking philosopher, and I said, could you achieve a fascist libertarian society where effectively the political corporative health was best served by laissez-faire economics? And he was like, yeah, weirdly enough, I think you probably could. It would be ironic, but you could. Right? God damn it. So anyways, my frustration with this is I'm happy that Rob found a book that had a specific definition of fascism that you could contend on. But once again, populism and paligenesis, appealing to some ancient good time that you want to revive, it's quite clear that the palingenesis of the MAGA movement is the 1950s and 1960s. All of their iconography, all of their symbols are from the 1950s and 1960s. And that is a part of flexible authoritarianism. And then, for political corporatism, ultranationalism is arguably a synonym. God damn it. God damn it.
But if you don't believe that and you want to go with Lonerbox's definition, there's a lot of similarities. Basically, the big difference is that instead of paligenetic, Lonerbox says that, well, authoritarianism. Okay, authoritarianism. Water. Very good, right? That's not part of the debate. I just needed a drink. Anyways, authoritarianism. Once more, what is the threshold for that? All governments are authoritarian. Was it authoritarian when I was told that I couldn't go to my place of business, but big box stores could stay open because of COVID? When we couldn't go to church, was that authoritarian? Was it authoritarian when Republican and Democrat administrations alike pushed the Patriot Act and took away our Fourth Amendment rights? Was it authoritarian when the Biden administration actually pressured social media groups to censor people? Was that authoritarian? Is it authoritarian when they tell us that we can't have bump stocks or assault weapons? All of these things could fit a definition of authoritarian, and much like the word fascist, what you'll see is authoritarianism is this catch-all phrase that's used predominantly by the left to denigrate people on the right for things they don't like. But boy, oh boy, do they love authority when they get to exercise it.
30 seconds.
Populists, we talked about. Ultranationalism, we talked about. The last thing is this debate is boring. Let me be straight up. And both Lonerbox and I are bullshitting you, right? The truth is, Lonerbox used this term before he did all this research, and I used terms like this before I did this research. Ask yourself this. If you think at the end of the day that the term fascism is ambiguous, ask yourself this. Why is he using this term? Why do people like him use the term? And you want to know why? Let me read you a little post here from our friend Lonerbox. This is from July 14th, 2024. Without the benefit of hindsight, at what point in the Weimar Republic would it have been morally acceptable to assassinate Hitler? That was 24 hours after Trump was shot at Butler. These people...
Based. Okay. It's a little spicy. Okay. It's a little spicy. It's a little spicy. Interesting. There's a question in chat I want to answer, but I want to let Rob finish that real quick.
People use these terms because they want to justify people like Tyler Robinson that killed Charlie Kirk writing on a bullet, catch this bullet fascism. That's what I'm here to argue, that shit needs to stop because they're using this term because it's loaded to weaponize people to use violence against people like us.
All right, I've got the timer set for you, gentlemen. The floor is all yours for open dialogue.
I do like, hold on, I'm going to rewind it a second just so we can enjoy this all together. I do like Admiral Gibbs walking through with a fucking big gulp, wearing his fucking Southern aristocratic fucking pimp suit. Take a look at this shit.
All right, I've got the timer set for you, gentlemen.
All right. So Unork says communism feels like fascism with different marketing. How brain dead am I for thinking this? You're not brain dead for thinking that, especially when it comes to Marxist-Leninists or Vanguard. Because Vanguard don't believe that they should have to go through democratic processes. They don't think that they should have to get the consent of the people. They think that the proletarians are too ignorant in order to actually institute a socialist society. And so as a result, they're okay with flexible authoritarianism. However, I will say that Marxian socialism specifically prescribes the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. Fascism makes no such prescription. Additionally, communists believe that the end state of humanity is a moneyless, stateless, classless society. Fascists make no such prescription. Now, if you want to make an argument that the socialist societies of the 20th century run by vanguard parties are shockingly similar to fascist prescriptions in that they're authoritarian, all the power is vested through great people, those great people are in charge of the state, and they do whatever the fuck they want with the state in order to institute their world vision, you are not crazy for comparing those two things. Jeb Kush for $2 says, I feel like they need to say the F slur now. True. James from Modern Day Debate did email me back, and so as a result, I think there's a high chance that I will, at minimum, be at the Modern Day Debate event as an audience member, if not a participant. So that should be quite fun. So I hope I don't get into I will try not to get into a fist fight.
Gentlemen, the floor is all yours for open dialogue.
So let's do the boring stuff first.
Hey, can I respond to that first?
What's that?
Can I respond to that first, or did you want to?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. One thing about authoritarianism, my definition of I'm not using it as a stand-in for palingenetic. I'm just saying authoritarian means that it's in contrast to liberalism, which basically offers one, again, we can talk about government overreach all day. Like yes, I accept every state does this. Authoritarianism is contrasted with liberalism, which offers people this basic right for citizens and contending political parties to influence the composition of government through elections. Authoritarians don't like that. Anti-authoritarians do. Do you have a problem with that definition? Or?
Well, yes, because what I would say, the devil's in the details there. So, for example, in this representative democracy we have here, if I vote for someone under the auspices that they will operate within the framework of our Constitution, and then they violate that, so they violate the First Amendment, is that authoritarianism, even though they were duly elected?
I wouldn't say that makes them an authoritarian. You could call it like on a spectrum of authoritarian measures, sure, or anti-democratic measures, but there's a fundamental difference between someone's worldview when they say that they are accepting that they exist in a country where people get to choose the makeup of government through elections and people who don't.
Okay, so then what would be the criteria we put that? You would acknowledge that it's just the rhetoric of Trump that would meet that and not the actual action. We had elections, Biden won, etc. So it's the rhetoric that's the problem?
No, it's the fact that he tried to change the results when he lost.
Do you think that he had any success in changing the results?
What do you mean? Was that what I asked? I said he didn't. He tried to change the results when he lost.
I didn't ask what you asked. I asked the question.
Yeah, so he tried to change the results when he lost.
Right. So he
you
tried.
don't get let off the hook for failing, right?
He tried, but he lost, right? Do you think there's something to be said about the actual effects that went into action? So if I try and I lose, if I try and I fail, and then another person tries and they have some sort of success, which one would be worse?
Well, going back, Hitler failed in the beer hall putsch, and he still ran in elections. Was he not being like authoritarian when he did that, or?
Well, I'm not. We're talking about this on a sliding scale because you're using sort of this unique definition of authoritarian, right? We could argue back and forth about it. What we would all agree is that there's certain thresholds of authoritarianism that wouldn't rise to the level of fascist, correct?
Would you be satisfied if I changed it to like anti-democracy, or?
I mean, would I? That's your definition.
That's why I'm asking, because I just want to see if we can actually find a definition that we agree on.
Instead of going through this, I'll get to the punchline. Like Trump and him trying to have a proposed legal challenge because he thought that there were shenanigans that went on in 2020, which he was right? Him having a proposed stalling strategy to have alternate electors, which would have caused stalling, which would have then led the courts to look at this stuff, isn't trying to overthrow the country. However, the Obama administration, working at the behest of Hillary Clinton, actually taking disinformation sourced by Russians in order to spy on Trump's campaign and presidency, sourced by Russians, paid for by Hillary Clinton, under the auspices of Trump was colluding with Russians, when the FBI and the Obama administration knew that it was Hillary's team that was colluding with Russians. How is that not accepting the results of democracy?
I'm just going to go.
Gosh darn it. I didn't know in 2026 we were going to bald-faced state that January 6, 2021 was a fair and legitimate attempt by the Trump administration to delay the outcome of the election so that the investigations of the quote-unquote shenanigans that happened during the mass mail-in voting of 2020 was not an attempt to overthrow the Republic of the United States. That's not even like... That's not even in contention. If you check the Eastman memo, they're not talking about trying to actually figure out outcome-determinative voter fraud in the separate states. They're talking about the 3 or 4 ways in which they can get Donald Trump to be secured for re-election. I don't know how he has the fucking nutsack to say that. I really don't. That was a crazy thing to say super casually.
Go back to the first thing that you said. Trump did not just offer a legal challenge, and he did not just say we want to stall for Eastman said 10 days, I think. Trump was saying to certify the proper slates, i.e. the fake ones for 7 states that he had produced.
And what would have been the result?
I don't know what the result would have been.
It would have went
America's
to the
never
court.
been in that situation.
It would have went to the court.
How
we
do you
have
know
been in
that?
that situation.
Has that ever happened before? Has a vice president ever just
Hawaii.
taken... No,
Yes.
In Hawaii,
Yes.
2 alternative slates. Were they both certified by the state or not?
No, only the Republican slate was. And yet the Democrats put forth a slate because they said, we want to stall because there'll be a recount. For those of you who don't know, here's what happens. There's
an outcome determinative, right? Oh my God. That wasn't even close to outcome determinative. Oh my God.
certain time frames that you have to meet, right? So it's like you have to have your electors in by a certain time frame. So I think it was 1960 Hawaii, what's going on is they knew there was going to be a recount. So the Republicans were the official slate of electors that the governor signed. They send that slate, which is what we're told you're supposed to do. The Democrats were worried that the recount would go their way, but there wouldn't be any recourse because these slates wouldn't be there. There would only be one slate there. So they proposed an alternate slate, which eventually was accepted. But
because they did the recount and it went for Kennedy. And on top of that, it wasn't outcome determinative, which is why nobody was prosecuted for like the fucking what would you call it? Like the violation of process. The recount, the Democrats were correct. The recount went to Kennedy. Not only that, but it wasn't outcome determinative, so there was no sense in prosecuting the people who had violated the election process. That's not what happened in 2020 and 2021. The alternate slates of electors were picked by the Trump administration not even pending, they just submitted them. They didn't have the fucking, oh my God. They didn't present the evidence for outcome determinative voter fraud in or out of court. Oh. Oh my God. Got a few super chats. Doobie for 10 says, to be fair, Hillary's team was working with Ukrainians to influence the election, not the Russians. I don't know. I remember the Steele dossier. I think the Steele dossier was produced by a opposition research guy getting some Russian sources who said that Trump hired prostitutes to piss on Obama's bed the day before he stayed in a hotel or something. Oh my God. Doobie says, and both of these were working with Israelis at different points. So, okay, thanks. Just in case we needed some more Israel takes. Real Sears for 100 Argentinian says, hi, Connor. Just a reminder that you can freely listen to APAC Money on this channel without getting canceled. True. I'll pull up APAC Money for the break. Doobie says, your mic is peaking when you shout because it can sense the soy lib in you. God damn it. God damn it. Hey, user, you dipshit. Connor can only defeat Rob when Rob isn't there to point out Connor's idiocy. Get dumpstered when arguing against real people, not straw men. Okay, please point out to me, user. Please point out to me how anything I just said in reference to the Hawaii separate slate of electors in the 2020 Eastman memo, please tell me how it's incorrect, you absolute fucking dipshit. You fucking brain-rotted, binary, team sports fucking dipshit. Feel free to explain how anything I just said was wrong. I'll wait. Actually, I'm not going to wait. Fuck you.
At the time of the sending of the slate of electors, we saw that actually there was a Democrat slate that was sent that was not signed by the governor.
Do you think that's the same? First of all, I'm not actually even sure that's true, given the legitimacy of the slates, because again, these didn't come from a party; they came from Trump and his own guys. Trump also produced a slate for a state that he didn't even claim to have won the popular vote in, which was New Mexico.
Trump's once more, what was going on? I'm not sure of the specifics of New Mexico. What I'll say is this. What was going on was that he wanted these legal challenges saw. Some of the legal challenges actually ended up being successful, at least temporarily. For example, in Pennsylvania, the Superior Court of Pennsylvania ruled that mail-in ballots were illegal. Now, the Supreme Court, which I believe is a 5-2 Democrat court, actually overturned that later. But the whole point was, once the game's over, it's over. So Trump's trying to be like, we have this election that is massively changed, where we have millions more voting than we ever had, millions using this system that we never had, that the Western world. By the way, what's mail-in voting like in Scotland?
I don't know. I don't engage in it.
How about the rest of Europe?
I don't know.
They don't really like it. I wonder why. Because everybody knows it's less secure.
Wait, so we try to challenge election results based on them? Since when we've done that?
What I'm saying is that it's perfectly reasonable.
This country's been doing it since the Civil War, no?
What's that?
This country, America, has been doing it since the Civil War.
Not
no?
like this. Like so,
just with more people.
Having absentee ballots or having like certain ballots because you're in the military, you have an illness is different. Like in my state of Pennsylvania, I think the amount of mail-in ballots that increased were something like 20 to 30% of all of our ballots were mail-in, and there's significant.
Was there something happening that year? I don't know. A pandemic disease that killed 1.1 million Americans? Even if you eliminated, let's just say that 200,000 of them were flu. It was a really bad flu year. And let's say 50,000 of them were from the common cold. It was a really bad cold year. That's still 750,000 excess deaths caused by a pandemic disease. That's why the mail-in ballots happened. Okay? So maybe, I don't know, it had to do with the 1.1 million excess deaths from 2020 and 2020 through 2022. Maybe that's why we did mail-in ballots. I don't know if you guys remember the fucking pandemic, but I remember it.
Problems, but I'm not getting into another
Just to be clear, though,
January
Rob,
6th debate again.
Well, these weren't the same complaints that Trump was having at the time. Well, first of all, before the election, he said that these alternate votes were going to be cast by different countries. We know that's not true, right? He's not even saying that anymore. That other countries were just making ballots and sending them to the United States to get them cast.
Well, we just had the revelation in 2020 that we saw China was hacking voting systems.
Well, what was China doing?
Was covered up by
was China making ballots and then trying to get them cast in the United States?
There are allegations of that.
No, they weren't doing that.
We're likely to learn more. We're likely to learn more about it. I know that you and the lefties don't want
more. We're likely to learn more.
The story's just breaking. We were told over and over certain things like illegals aren't on the registry. Oh, they are. Well, illegals don't vote. Oh, we are. We just learned that this week. Then we had the story break about China. Actually, China was doing everything that we accused Russia of doing in 2016. And instead of our FBI deciding, oh, we're going to just blow up this massive scandal to help Hillary Clinton, this time they covered it up. Now, if it's so important to secure our elections from foreign sources, why'd the FBI hide that information for years?
Again,
Yeah, dude, this is where it's like a fire hose of fucking disinformation. So, like, in reference to the China shit, they hacked and obtained, like, substantial amounts of voter data. But we don't have any evidence that China filled in fake ballots and falsely participated in the election system. If you have that evidence, by the way, I'm happy to hear about that. I would love to hear about that. If we had any proof whatsoever that China obtained substantial amounts, I think it was like 200 million people. If they obtained 200 million American names, addresses, etc., and we have a shred of evidence that Chinese operatives submitted fake ballots inside the United States, I would love to hear about that shit. Please inform me more on that. But that's not what was presented.
I feel like I need to correct like three things at once. The first thing that happened with China that we do know about, we'll get the facts in the future. Hopefully this thing that Trump just pulled out of his ass 6 months before the 2020 election just turns out to be true now when we don't have any facts. In China, there was one actor apparently who downloaded publicly available voter information for 6 states. We don't know why they did that. US Intel doesn't know why they did that. That's the problem. That's what happened with China. Someone in China downloaded publicly available voter information for 6 states. Not they tried to cast alternative ballots or fake ballots or fraudulent ballots, send them to the United States and get them cast as votes. When Trump said that in 2020 before the election, it's made up.
Again.
Yes or no?
What?
Yes.
Yes. Did you get that from someone? Again, Trump specifically saying things,
Yes or no?
oftentimes he's prone to hyperbole. My man Dinesh called him a fabulous. I thought that was a good word, right? Like he's prone to hyperbole. I don't know specifically
people believe
everything.
it. You said it's true. We just don't have the facts.
Let me finish. Probably we'll look into it, and he didn't say exactly what you're quoting. It's irrelevant to this point. What I'm saying is Trump thought that there were problems with the election, as did millions of other people. He wanted a delaying tactic to see it. The other side did everything they could to rush it along because they weren't afraid that it was a lie. They were afraid it was the truth. But it's interesting. You said something there that I want to address. I noticed that you didn't talk about anything about what the Democrats and the Obama administration did not accepting the results of the 2016 election. In fact, a YouGov poll in 2018, that was 2 years after that election, said that nearly 2/3 of Democrats believed that Russians manipulated votes in order to swing the election for Trump. This is because of the rhetoric of Hillary Clinton, who was still saying in 2018 that the election was stolen from her by Russians. And now we see that the Obama administration was actually taking the information given by Hillary, sourced by Russians to get illegal FISA warrants. My question to you is, even if you want to scream January 6th is
Hi, Nico Polito. Good to see you. Number one, weren't there documented Russian psychological operations for the past decade? So just, a few thousand Russians in bot accounts and all that bullshit propping up American opinion. Don't we have the Tenet media allegations where because Russia has been limited in its sphere of influence within the United States, they paid millions of dollars to alternative media creators in the United States in order to do pro-Russian talking points. Laura Loomer, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, Lauren Southern, Lauren Chen. I'm trying to think if Tim Pool. They were all a part of this. So we know there were Russian psychological operations for the past decade. And then not just that, but as a part of the warrants that went up against the Trumps, they found out that the Trumps met with Russian intel in order to maybe get opposition research against Hillary Clinton. Nothing came out of it. So hold on. Did the Trump boys meet with Russians to get anti-Clinton opposition research? Yes, Donald Trump Jr. met with a Russian lawyer at Trump Tower in 2016 after being promised damaging information on Hillary Clinton. Emails released later showed he welcomed the offer, though attendees stated the meeting shifted to discussions on Russian adoptions and no useful information was provided. So it's not whether or not the Trump campaign was actually working with the Russians. The Russians just didn't deliver anything of use. God damn it.
authoritarianism. How does that not prove the modern Democratic Party is as well?
First of all, that's a very compelling claim about the Democrats and Hillary Clinton, who conceded the results of the election, within 24 hours? And even that was enough for even people on her side to make fun of her for it, because she took a few hours longer than most people do because she was upset. And I made fun of her for that, as someone who supported her. So we're going to compare this to Trump.
Scotland, what are you supporting her for? Don't you have kilts or something?
Listen, there are cops here, quiet. Listen, that's a really compelling claim about the Democrats. The topic of the debate is whether or not Trump is a fascist. If you want to lay down a whole premise for why you think actually the Democrats are the real fascists, which would be really fascinating, we can do that another time. When it comes to Trump, again, you said this thing earlier, which again, I don't know, I guess we both agree with the populism, but populism is not just saying that we want to appeal to loads of people, or I think we're standing for the little man. Populism, and it's something again that I think Trump and Mussolini and Hitler and other fascists seem to all hold in conjunction, is this idea of the amount of unbelievable charity that they give to their leaders. It's the fact that we've got Trump, who, Dinesh D'Souza earlier, he said something when he was talking about the 40 million immigrants arriving under Biden, he said something like, well, that's a lie, but it triggers the right emotion in people, therefore I like it. I'm not paraphrasing that, am I? He said that. Like the
what
lie
is
was
it?
okay. And this
Let me ask you this.
This is what,
Like,
because
first
it worked.
off-
Because it just worked on you, is why I'm saying.
I know.
Because with
Here's
China,
what I'm going to do. I'm
because
going
it
to
works on you.
I'm going
Because
to
with
clearly.
China,
I'm going to clearly
because
go
with-
back to the Russia thing real quick and just
because
say,
with-
notice how he ran from it. The reason this is important is if everything's fascism, nothing's fascism. So at the end of the day, you might be saying technically he's right. If the Democrats are fascist, that doesn't prove that Trump's not. But go back to that point that I made at the beginning. At the end of the day, probably the average person amongst you is like me, and you're going to be like, yeah, there's a lot of words that we could use definitions for fascism. So why are we using this one particularly? And what's happening is he's willing to overlook Democrat fascism because he wants to use this term to label conservatives. That way they could justify not Lonerbox, who's a chill guy, right? But he knows he's part of a community in DGG that their moderator is calling school shooter vibes. He knows that that's what's going on. He knows 24 hours after a Trump assassination attempt that he's out there saying, what point should we have taken Hitler out? So when he starts his opening statement here and goes, well, it's about preventing it. It's about, I'm not concerned about the end results. I'm concerned about the beginning. And who cares if you want to call Democrats fascists whatsoever? Here was the results of Democrats refusing to accept the results of an election just because she said, I concede, then it's okay to all of a sudden weaponize the FBI to hamper, unlike anything that Trump did or Trump's team did going into the 2020 Biden term. So the point is,
True either. Donald Trump leveraged Ukrainian aid on whether or not they would publicly announce that they were investigating the Biden family for corruption. Now, for me, as pointed out by somebody at the time, I have concerns about Hunter Biden's cronyism and nepotism and corruption in reference to Burisma, but the correct course of action would not be leveraging international aid and delaying international aid in order to fucking get a public statement that your election opponent is under corruption investigation publicly. It would be to turn it over to the Department of Justice for investigation. Oh my God. So yelling can't hear you? I'm sorry, do I need to calm myself? Donald Trump leveraged foreign aid to Ukraine and delayed foreign aid so the Ukrainian government would announce a corruption investigation against the Biden family. So yes, Donald Trump was willing to weaponize the justice system, the legal system, and geopolitics in order to damage his political opponent. Okay.
is that he's justifying the selective use of this term. That's what he's running from on the Russia thing. That's why he doesn't want to talk about it. Because he wants you to think that Trump's this unique boogie. Only Trump's a populist. To answer this question of populism, who's your author? Are you getting most of this from Robert Paxton? Mm-hmm. What does he say the minimum is in order to be a fascist?
Does he say there's a minimum for which variable?
He rejects a minimum specifically. In other words, would Paxton say that a government could be all of the three things you outlined and still not be fascist?
Well, just to be clear, Paxton does think Trump is a fascist.
It doesn't matter if he thinks or not. The question was, if he rejects a minimum, is it possible to do all the three things that you've outlined?
Well, he rejects a minimum, but so am I.
Yes or no?
Well, he rejects a minimum, but so am I. I'm not saying that you can meet one of these pillars and still be a fascist. I don't.
So can you answer that you could meet all three and not be fascist?
You could meet all three. I don't know who would meet all three and not be a fascist. No.
But if there's no minimum, that means you could be a populist, you could be authoritarian.
But that's not what he means by no. Is that what he means by no minimum?
Yes, he means that there is literally, he specifically
well, how
rejects
do you know that?
this.
Because
this is why flexible authoritarianism, once understood, is so necessary. Because yes, any action done by the government is authoritarian if it imposes itself upon any citizen. It is using authority. As a matter of fact, let's just Google authority. It's like appealing to authority. Authoritarian definition. Authoritarian means demanding strict obedience, centering power in a single leader or small group, and rejecting individual freedom. You can review broader political context on Britannica. So this is going to be a spectrum, right? But it's arguable that when you're pulled over by a law enforcement officer and issued a ticket, they are demanding of you strict obedience to centralized power. Okay? So we can argue about degrees of authoritarianism, but we can agree that it's like some level of authoritarianism. If authoritarianism is on the spectrum, and anarchy is on one side, and totalitarian dictatorship is on the other side, getting a speeding ticket is somewhere in the middle, right? We can argue about how far to one way it is or the other, but it's more authoritarian than living in an anarchic society where nobody has authority over you whatsoever. So, the point is flexible authoritarianism. I do not argue that Iran is a fascist society because it's not. It's authoritarian, but they clearly have a theocratic republican structure. Oh, very frustrating. Doobie says, I wish you guys would stop treating populism like a dirty word. Just makes you seem elitist, which you are, to be honest. But you're not supposed to let the voters know that you think they're a vulgar mob of sheep. My loyalty to the truth is higher than my desire to appeal to the vulgar mob of sheep. I would rather openly say that I view the average person as a member of a vulgar mob of sheep and say that routinely than not be able to see it. Doobie also says, it also contradicts your other messaging. Are Trump and the tech oligarchs working together to screw over the little man, or is it wrong to pit the average people against the self-serving corrupt elite? Or is it wrong to pit the average person against a self-serving corrupt elite? I would say that their populism is cynical, Doobie. So if number one, I'm skeptical of populism in the first place. But number two, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to say, hey, the average man is getting a bad shake and we need to fight for him to have a better shake. That's not my problem. My problem is that I think that the techno-feudalists are cynically using anti-Washington, D.C. sentiment to say that they're anti-elitist when they just want a different kind of elitism. That's the criticism. Hold up. Connor's got to use the restroom. Be right back.
It's the three pillars thing. I was doing that for the purpose of the debate. I'm summarizing what I've read from Paxton. He doesn't say there are three pillars and there's no minimum.
You're getting your... Yes or no, the scholar that you're using predominantly is Paxton.
I'm deriving it, yes.
Yes.
But I've adapted it a bit for the debate because if Paxton...
So you're taking
to
a
be clear,
scholar...
Paxton's definition is a book. It's a 200-page book, so I'm not going to...
Yes, but don't you think that there's a problem when people... Like, look, I debated in college. This is what assholes like us do, right? We come up and we read, oh, this guy wrote this, I got to debate. I look into this book, I find something, and then you shoehorn it into your own shit. And that's what he's doing. He's taking this scholar that specifically says there is no minimum. Right? Now, what that means, just in case you're listening, is you theoretically could be ultranationalist and a populist, and you could be authoritarian, but you're still not a fascist. So how do we know, then, if there's no minimum that his scholar outlines? Converse that to my definition that gives a specific minimum. It must be paleogenetic, it must be populist, and it must be ultranationalist. So what he wants you to believe is that we should just accept on his word. But my feeling is, even though James, our moderator who's running things on time, sounds very fascist to me, right? Even if he meets all three of those things, well, maybe he's not a fascist, but Trump is. And ask yourself constantly, why is he doing this? Why is he so hell-set on calling Trump a fascist? So I want you to explain to me why we should accept this definition where there is literally no minimum given. What's the threshold before when you personally choose to call someone a fascist?
Okay, so when it comes to Paxton, when he lays out, again, because he lays it out throughout a book, okay? Maybe he can disagree with the way that I've interpreted it. I think it's fairly clear. When he lays out that there is the populism, there's the anti-establishment variable, which is what separates them from most other dictatorships. There is the national revivalism, which actually I think is pretty much the same as paleogenetic. I just didn't want to use that term because it sounds pretentious, but and then there's the fact that they don't believe in the idea that people should be able to choose the makeup of government through elections, which is how Paxton defines authoritarian at the beginning of his book. So
Trump's done that.
Who crosses all three of those things in Paxton's book who he doesn't think is a fascist? There's no one.
There could be plenty of people.
But
how about this?
They?
Let's ask you this question. You or Paxton either. Name me a government after like World War II era that you consider fascist, other than the Trump administration.
Can you just move the mic a little bit closer so it's angled? There you go.
Got it. I want to stare at him, so, you know.
You got it.
A government that he talks about, he probably would. He gets a very fencing position on the Ayatollah, the first one in Iran. But yeah, he wrote that in 2004, which is when he did point out that quite a lot of parties in Europe were moving towards power. He mentions Le Pen specifically, but not governments. No,
Yeah.
That's why Paxton, when he was coming back again. Just because fascism died and didn't come back into power for a long time, most fascisms in the 30s and 20s failed, didn't they?
I would say there's plenty of political parties that would meet this definition, and yet Paxton or you never
Which
flagged.
ones, though? Which ones are, paleogenetic, nationalist, populist, and
Well,
authoritarian?
paleogenetics, my definition, not yours. Like, so what?
Again, I was just using the exact,
Fair enough. Let's go through it. Populist.
paleogenetic nationalism and
Do
authoritarian.
you think I could name? Do you think I could name a government or a political party in a major country that was populist in the past 50 years?
Well, given that that's only one pillar, I don't know why that
Okay,
would
so
prove
you
anything.
accept that. There was plenty that were populist, right? Now, next, number 2. Your next is authoritarian. Can we name any governments that was both populist and authoritarian in the past 50 years? Should be pretty simple,
Populist
right?
and authoritarian?
Correct.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, but I was locked down during COVID. Democrats.
The key conception missing is flexible authoritarianism. The key conception missing is flexible. I know I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm the only person that understands this fucking topic besides Keith Woods, Cultured Thug, me, and Doobie. It's literally Cultured Thug, me, Doobie, and Keith Woods. We're the only people who understand this fucking topic. Maybe Nick Fuentes. It's very frustrating. Doobie says, yeah, I think Trump's populism is an act. I'm talking about anti-Trump libs who still speak of populism like it's a bad thing or conflate it with fascism because Trump uses it. They call it slopulism. Yeah, but I mean, like, the reticence of populism is effectively like it's resentment of the populist masses, of course. That the average people can be manipulated into stupid shit because they're fucking, they don't understand complex conception. And it's basically, I've been over this before, I'll try to make it brief. It's the middle school class president speech. Okay? Vote for me for class president. I will make it so in the cafeteria every single day they serve pizza as an option for lunch. And instead of having ice cream Fridays, it'll be 3 times a week. Right? And then everybody goes, oh shit, I fucking love pizza. I love ice cream. I'm voting for that class president. Even though that person has no capacity to actually deliver what they're promising. And on top of that, there's logistical reasons for why you don't have fucking pizza and ice cream every goddamn day. That's it. That's why we hate that's why I hate populism. That's why a lot of elitists hate populism, is because promising the fucking class pizza and ice cream every goddamn day is a really easy way to get popular, but it's not necessarily good policy. You know what I'm saying? All right.
How is that saying that you don't believe that people should be allowed to choose government by participating in elections?
I don't think that that's what the term authoritarian means. I think authoritarian could mean taking power, using your institution to take power from the people in ways that's illegitimate, right? So, for example, if we have a Bill of Rights and our government is elected and says, we trust in elections, we believe in elections, but no one's allowed to speak anymore. You no longer have free speech. Is that authoritarian?
Okay, so again, when I'm proposing a definite, and again, we probably both agree that neither Paxton nor Griffin would say that these are the prerequisites to be a fascist.
No, I think Griffin
They
would
probably would
absolutely
agree.
say he
What?
outlines
COVID
it
measures.
specifically.
COVID measures would qualify as
Oh,
fascist to
no,
Griffin.
no. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the 3 that we're outlining.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying when I'm saying authoritarian, you might
How does
you might
Paxton
have a different
define authoritarian then?
authoritarian or authoritarianism.
Either.
So when he says authoritarian, I think it's on like it's within the first like 30 pages. He says something about how, I think I actually quoted it directly, didn't I? He said something about how it's the difference between, contrasted with a liberal regime that believes that the public should be allowed to choose the makeup of government through elections.
You don't think Trump thought that the people should be allowed to choose the makeup of government through elections?
Well, only when he wins. Because when he
Okay, same
loses,
with
he says there's
Democrat.
fraud and he tells Mike Pence to make him president.
No, did he?
Yes, he did, yes.
No, he didn't?
Mike Pence tested that, yes.
No, he didn't. See
what
the
did I
eye-
say? What did I
Get
just
him,
say?
audience.
Trump's
Get him.
Yes, I know. Whoever the fuck. Mike
Hey,
Pence.
that's a valued ticket buyer. Don't be talking shit. You know?
I'm aware that Mike Pence, Giga Chad, didn't do what Trump told him to. I'm saying what Trump told him to do.
What I'm
Pence
saying
says that
is,
Trump
we've
told him to
already
make him
gone through.
president.
We have a dispute as to what Trump wasn't saying. No, I lost, so just make me king. Trump was saying, I believe there was cheating. By the way,
So
were you
make me
aware of the
king?
fact that two questions on this real quick, since we're going down this rabbit hole. Do you know what the Transition Integrity Project is?
No.
Okay, this was a project that was led by John Podesta and other Democratic strategists that wargamed out the 2020 election. They said if Biden lost, you know what the Democrat strategy would be? You ready for this? Alternate electors. They also suggested that they would have states like California threaten to secede from the Union. Remember when all the super cool Democrat celebrities like the Avengers cast was saying, now you could do it, electors. You could choose to actually vote in a different direction. How wasn't that them being fascist then?
That's a great theory again, Rob, and I'm sure it's very, very correct factually all the way through. The fact is that this is a debate about whether or not Trump is a fascist. We can do a Democrat debate on fascism another time if you want. The question is whether or not Trump is, and now it seems to be that we're stuck on the idea that Trump doesn't accept election results when he loses.
I'm saying that in the modern United States landscape, no one accepts elections results when they lose as a totality of the parties. The Democrats said they were cheating. In fact, they were already priming the pump for the 2020 election. Remember, Trump's taking away mail ballots. He's taking away mailboxes. It's a big conspiracy. He's going to control USPS. He's not going to allow. Both sides were doing this shit. It started with the Democrats in 2016 that even though they said we accept the results of the election, for the first time in history, weaponized our FISA courts to utilize the entire FBI to spy on the Trump administration. That story, by the way, hampered his entire administration for 4 years. Now, what was hampered with Biden when Trump peacefully left power? Oh, nothing. He had a mandate to censor people that criticized the 2020 election, authoritarian. He had a mandate to aggressively go after everyone on January 6th and treat them like persona non grata. And then he proceeded to try to censor people that were talking about COVID.
Has anyone ever told you that less is more, Rob? I'm sorry. It's just that, way early. I'm sorry. Just way earlier on, you were. It's just that you're using every sentence. What was that sentence that just triggered that entire soliloquy? It was because I said something about. It's because I said something about how.
We're talking about authoritarianism,
it's
right?
Because I said that Trump doesn't, it's because I said that Trump doesn't accept the results when he loses. Oh, well, everyone. People make excuses. People say, oh, yeah, if the Russian disinformation hadn't happened, then maybe more people would have voted for me. But I still conceded the results. Trump still does not confess that he has lost the 2020 election, did he?
He's
never said that he lost.
Why would him saying I concede make any difference?
That you acknowledge the process, that you acknowledge the fact that you lost an election, that you're taking part in a democracy?
He acknowledged it by leaving.
Oh, he acknowledged it by leaving. Okay.
Yes.
And what's he doing now? He's still saying he won. He's
so
still,
what?
Okay.
What if we find, by the way,
I want to fucking kill myself. This is why I called Rob Noerr the F slur. Dude, I need to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where the Jim Carrey breaks up with his girlfriend, and then she goes for some surgery where they wipe every memory of Jim Carrey, and then he does the same surgery, but then he's running through all the memories, trying to desperately preserve all of his memories with his ex-girlfriend or wife because he loves her so much or whatever. I need that, but I need that for the F slur. Okay? Because I find this argumentation so fucking wild that the President of the United States can castigate doubt about the validity of the elections of 2020. He can not prove outcome determinative voter fraud for a fucking half decade. He can still claim that he won 2020. He got somebody fucking killed. Ashley Babbitt is dead because of Trump. 3 or 4 people had cardiovascular events and died as a result of Trump. There are a half dozen people who are dead because of his rhetoric. And yet here we are now in 2026, and we have to pretend that Donald Trump didn't try to overthrow the fucking election. Are we serious? I truly need the fucking machine from the Eternal Sunshine of the fucking Spotless Mind in order to erase the F slur from my brain because I feel like screaming that at Rob Noerr right now. I can't believe he has the fucking cojones to make this line of argumentation. Oh.
Curious, hypothetically,
What
if we actually ended up fighting results that, like, at least one state did have cheating and it went the wrong direction?
Like,
is it still fascist?
If there was outcome determinative results.
What if it was just outcome determinative for one state?
Well, a couple of things. One, I would maybe ask, like, if Trump actually knew any of that before, like, we found out this much later.
That's enough.
But the fact is, no, I'll just give it all to you. Let's just say that Trump actually does uncover the fact that he should have won. Like, it was outcome determinative. Of course, that would change my opinion on whether or not he respects the results of elections.
So then the second question that stems from this is, if he truly believed that.
But all I'm hearing is, we'll get the truth tomorrow.
If he truly believed that, would it be fascist?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know, like when Hitler said that he truly believed that the Jews were the reason that Nazi Germany went to war, does that really change whether or not it was a racist opinion? Like, no.
That's not the question. We're not
if you're
talking
delusional,
about a racist
you can still be anti-democracy even though you think you are. It depends how you act. I judge people based on what they do, not what they say about themselves.
What does democracy mean?
In this context, we're talking about the right to participate for the people to choose the composition of government through elections.
So so let's say, here's another hypothetical. Let's forget about Trump for a second, or let's say Trump did this. Instead of doing what he did, he faked a bunch of ballots and he put them in and then he won. Would that be anti-democracy?
Yeah, of course.
Would you saying, hey, that's fucked up, we shouldn't swear Trump in, he faked a bunch of ballots, would that make you a fascist?
If it was outcome determined, well, again, we're talking about one pillar. I don't know why you keep doing this. It would have to be more than one pillar. To both of us, it has to be more than just one
Fair
variable.
enough. So the question is, when this is the key thing that we're saying, because we're admitting populism's like whatever, and when it comes to the idea of authoritarianism on this specific, would that make you authoritarianism?
What if Trump faked a bunch of ballots and I said you should be president because you faked ballots?
You said we should know. We should look into that. I think he cheated. Are you fascist or is he authoritarian?
If Trump faked ballots and like outcome determinative, or if he just committed a crime?
Yeah, you think it's outcome determinative, sure.
Okay, if it's outcome determinative and he did it, and I think he shouldn't be president, then yeah, I don't think you should be able to get to be president because you faked ballots. Yeah.
Okay, so what if you said that and you were like, no, I don't think you should be president. We need to look into this, and then it turned out you were wrong. Were you fascist when you made those statements?
And it turns out I was wrong.
Correct.
Well, then you could say I was delusional, yeah. But then that would
you would be authoritarian.
Well, no,
when you
if I was delusional, yeah, that would mean that I didn't really respect the process.
So you were authoritarian.
You could say so, yeah.
I think that's absurd. So then it determines. So right now we're in a state of Schroeder.
Obviously. Oh, I'll try not to yell so I peek out my mic. All right, Doobie's right. I'm being soy right now. Except for Donald Trump still won't acknowledge reality 6 years later and still claims there was outcome determinative voter fraud. So if I go to whitehouse.gov, house.gov 2020 election integrity, vulnerability. So instead of saying, hey, we found proof positive outcome determinative election fraud in the 2020 election. Okay. Let's just say that Donald Trump says, hey, we have 50,000 votes in Georgia, 10,000 votes in Arizona, 20,000 votes in New Mexico, 30,000 votes. And here are the dead people and illegal immigrants who use the mail-in voter system in order to get counted votes that rob Donald Trump of the 2020 election. I would change my tune instantaneously. Okay? Instantaneously, I'd be like, I hate Donald Trump. I think he's a piece of shit. But guess what? Here's all these names and ballots. And if the mainstream media and if the law enforcement divisions can't prove that Trump is lying, it looks like there was outcome determinative voter fraud. But we are now 6 years later. Donald Trump has not proven outcome determinative voter fraud. And even when he said he was going to, he was finally going to release the Kraken. Instead, we get vague allegations that there's vulnerabilities in the electronic voting and ballot counting systems, China's acquisition and exploitation of voter data, which Rob Noerr effectively lied about in this debate, the Michigan voter registration investigation, which, by the way, is ballot harvesting illegal in Michigan? And if so, then where are the criminal prosecutions? And if you have the criminal prosecutions, are these outcome determinative? Non-citizens on state voter rolls. How many of these people voted? Was it outcome determinative? I have a feeling that if there was outcome determinative voter fraud, Donald Trump would have published the evidence available. But since he fucking hasn't, and he's had 6 years to do so, I would say that this is utter horse shit. So the fact that Rob Noerr is still confidently regurgitating this bullshit is wild to me.
Schrodinger's fascism.
Just to be clear,
where if it
by the
turns
way.
out, like, it's nonsense.
Well, by your hypothetical, it seems to mean that like anyone who's ever like committed any kind of crime or anything, like what changes the fact about whether or not they they're aware that they're
A
doing it,
legal
or?
system is different. A legal question with a law is different than the question of if someone embraces some sort of ideology. If I truly think that I'm fighting for democracy, like, for example, let's say I'm really for Citizens United. I think that's a democratic thing. And then I talk to you and you're like, Rob, my man, you delusional fat bastard. Citizens United, that's a mess. That's anti-democratic. That doesn't mean I was a fascist when I was pushing because I thought it was a more democratic thing. It doesn't make it fascist at all.
So you apply this standard just like all across the board then, right? So that means like the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is sitting there in his head and he genuinely believes that actually, no, the people don't want elections. They love me. They would fucking hate it if we had elections. He's no longer authoritarian?
Well, the question would be that specific.
Okay,
no, let me, because that by definition is saying if the question is authoritarian is not allowing democratic voices and you say, I don't think the voices want a voice, so I won't give them a voice, that seems to be a little different. What I'm talking about specifically is saying, I think that I'm adequately representing the democratic process because I think people's votes were misread or were cheated, etc. And so we want to take time to look into that. The other side said, no, we don't. Do you think it's, if corruption can be anti-democratic and authoritarian, do you think the fact that Democrats are fighting so hard to avoid voter rolls to be turned over
Just to stay on
means
topic,
that they're
yeah,
authoritarian?
I'm pretty sure that if you just happen to spend 6 years accidentally, all the accidents happen in the same direction. That's interesting.
Correct.
You just happen to accidentally be stumbling into only ever accepting election results when you win. Then yeah, you probably just don't really have that much care for the democratic system.
Again, your opinion of that, I'm telling you, Democrats
It's
did
not-
Dude, I want Lonerbox to go on fucking offense. I want him to go on offense. I appreciate him being good faith. I appreciate him arguing with respect. I appreciate that this is in front of a live audience. I want him to go on fucking offense. This is fucking crazy pants. The fact that we're literally arguing this 6 years later, Donald Trump has had an opportunity in order to have 6 years to prove outcome determinative voter fraud in or out of court. And Rob is still over here making January 7th, 2021 style arguments. I'm like furious. I'm furious. This is fucking crazy pants. And the fact that people like eat this shit up drives me even more fucking nuts. The evidence does not line up with you. The evidence points to the Trump administration being knowing, lying, manipulative, Machiavellian fucks. And so the fact that you're over here fucking sweeping for them, I can only assume it's like weaponized ignorance and stupidity. It is fucking batshit to me. And whenever Rob Noerr says, oh, but the Democrats, fuck the Democrats. Okay, fuck them all. Okay, they could be the biggest pieces of shit on the fucking planet. That has nothing to do with whether or not Donald Trump himself is a lying, Machiavellian, manipulative, narcissistic piece of shit. When reality doesn't line up with him, he would rather repeat what he wants to be real over and over and over again until his sycophants bend to his will or reality forces him to move to a new position. The emperor has no fucking clothes. Holy shitballs.
Not just
thing. This is what it is, right? It's like this thing. You see this with leftists all the time, right? They're really pissed off about the way you talk. They'll get pissed because Trump says something that they actually do. Oh my gosh, Trump said lock her up. So we
what kind of evidence would prove outcome determinative? Literally, like, how much did Donald Trump lose Georgia by? Wasn't it like 11,000 votes? How many votes did Donald Trump lose Georgia by? 11,779 votes. So find me, similar to how Donald Trump was asking the governor of Georgia, okay? Find me 11,780 votes that are from dead people or non-citizens. Dead people, non-citizens, people who never cast a vote. And I will say that there was outcome-determinative voter fraud in the state of Georgia that robbed Donald Trump of the fucking outcome, right? But even then, that's not enough to make him president. How many states did he need? How many states did Trump need to win 2020? AI. In 2020, President-elect Donald Trump needed to, or presidential election, Donald Trump needed to win enough states to reach 270 out of 538. Because of the number of states needed depends entirely on which states the candidate wins. There's no fixed number of individual states required. Trump actually won 25 states plus one electoral vote in Maine, 232 total short of the 270. So he needs 270. Georgia was 16. Arizona was 11. Pennsylvania was 20. I think these are the three that he needed, right? So 16 plus 11 plus 20, that's 31. That's 31, 47, 47 plus, what did he have? 232. Yeah, that would have gotten him. So Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. So even if you flip Georgia with 11,780 proof positive outcome determiner votes, you still need to flip Pennsylvania and Arizona.
Went after him with every lawfare we could. But it's okay when we did it, but Trump suggesting it and then not doing it's bad. Same thing here. So what he's saying is like, well, you know, Trump pissed and moaned and said, oh, this sucks, but nothing happened and they abdicated
He didn't just
power.
piss and moan.
Meanwhile,
He took court
let me finish real
cases.
quick. Meanwhile, Democrats weaponized the FBI.
Yeah, Fatsimo, but you're not even paying attention to the story. Georgia is currently getting sued over it. They want to get the ballots back for evidence. Yeah, sure. And Georgia, 360,000 votes improperly certified. Jack Smith labels Georgia ground zero in 2020 election, blah, 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 okay? So what happened here was Georgia had like 300,000 votes that were improperly taped when they were transported. And then the Georgia state recounted those votes, didn't find the voter fraud, and then certified those votes. That's what happened. So if you want to claim that 360,000 ballots are fraudulent, that's on you. That's on Donald Trump. And by the way, he's had 6 years to prove this. So Fatsimo, feel free to hit me with any news update showing that the 360,000 votes that were improperly transported in the state of Georgia are indicative of outcome determinative voter fraud. Please hit me with that information. I have been begging for it. Ever since Sidney Powell promised me the Kraken, I have been begging for the Kraken for 6 years.
Yeah, the gold standard for political scandals in this country is Watergate. 2 bumbling fools going through a hotel of an opponent. This dude is supporting the Democrats weaponizing the entirety of the FBI, illegally getting FISA warrants, the most powerful intel agent in the world, to hamper Trump's administration. And we're like, but as long as they said the magic words, I concede, well, then it's okay. Then it's not anti-democratic. It's absurd. The results matter. And what I'm saying is, the reason this matters is because you're picking. Have you ever used a different definition of the term fascism?
Probably.
Do you think if I was to call you right now a cultural Marxist, that would be fascist?
Would it make you a fascist to call me a cultural Marxist?
Would it be fascist rhetoric for me to call you that?
Maybe lean a little bit, but
What
not
about that
necessarily, no.
rhetoric? Can you explain what that is? that would make it fascist?
It depends, because for one, cultural Marxism is referring to a real thing with regards to the Frankfurt School, but then on the other side, it often overlaps with the neo-Nazi conspiracy theory about cultural Bolshevism. So I probably have a few more questions about what you mean by cultural Marxism before I made any determination.
We got November 16th, 2019, Lonerbox tweets out, you literally joined a party that
Why are you talking about me from 2019? Like, go on. I was retarded in 2019.
Wasn't
just so
my
you know, yeah.
question. So you're consistent. Yeah. It's,
All right, that was cute.
your tweet was, you joined a party that bolsters fascist conspiracy theories. In the first paragraph, it's free speech policy. This is from UKIP, and you highlight specifically the term cultural Marxism in their platform as a fascist conspiracy theory. You no longer...
Okay, dude, I need an opportunity to think for myself because I feel like I'm getting fire hosed by stupidity, okay? And by the way, I don't think Rob's an unintelligent guy. That's one of the things that pisses me the fuck off, is I don't think Rob is an unintelligent guy. I think he just argues for some of the worst dog shit on the fucking planet. That's seriously my beef with Rob Noerr, is that I do not think he is a stupid man. I think he argues for wildly fucking stupid things. Oh, okay. So, I'm unaware about the Frankfurt School. I would have to read about the Frankfurt School specifically, but who fucking knows? Who cares? I know for a fact that Gramsci was a leftist philosopher who was wondering why communist and socialist revolutions that were predicted to happen in the capitalist world were happening in feudal societies like China and Russia. And what he came up with was that the social institutions, the military, law enforcement, pop culture, the oligarchs, all that kind of bullshit, what they did is they were acting as an autoimmune response about leftist thought. And so what he prescribed was that leftists need to take left-wing philosophy and thought, and they need to apply it to social issues. That way, more of the proletariat can become accommodated to left-wing thought, and therefore the eventual socialist revolution would be inevitable because more people were convinced who were a part of these social institutions that were acting as counter-revolutionary forces. Marcuse was a gentleman who was, I think he was like a German philosopher who lived in the United States for a while and was ultimately banned from the United States by Ronald Reagan. He continued that line of thought, arguing that not only was Gramsci correct, but basically here's all of my social critiques of America during the 1960s and 1970s that I think will inject more leftist thought into the political zeitgeist. And Marcuse was a popular guy at his time. Marcuse is arguably one of the largest influences on the people who authored critical race theory and diversity, equity, inclusion papers. Like, he taught some of those people directly, and then he also taught people who then taught some of the most fucking influential CRT and DEI authors. So, if you have a direct academic line of 100 years of leftist philosophy in academia, going back all the way to Gramsci, talking about trying to make a cultural revolution in order to make leftist thought more palatable, then I'm 100% with calling people like quote-unquote cultural Marxists, even though a true Marxist would say, this has nothing to do with the decommodification of basic human needs or workers owning the means of production. Quite clearly, what is copied from that is class struggle between the bourgeois and the proletariat. But what ends up happening is white supremacy, and arguably Jewish supremacy, becomes the new bourgeois, and the proletariat are the people of color and the people outside of the imperial core. Fuck my ass sideways.
That's what people do. They, what, 7 years ago, 6 years ago? Yeah, they look into the facts and they change their mind on things, unlike Trump on the 2020 election. But yeah.
So just to be clear, you were mistaken when you called UKIP fascist in 2019.
Yeah, of course I was, yeah.
Is Reform fascist now?
Probably not, because they don't have I've not seen any evidence that they plan to disrespect the results of an election that they lose.
You respond to someone on 11/26/25 saying, I shit on Reform all the time. I just think likening them to Nazis is retarded.
Yeah.
maybe in the last 10 years didn't happen. You know how often you call someone a fascist Nazi has zero correlation on how politically useful. That's interesting. So Nigel Farage that runs UKIP in 2019, fascist conspiracy theorist. In 2025, when you're arguing with Hassan bros who actually are Marxists, you're like, oh my gosh, how can you call Nigel Farage's party fascist? Now, do you see what I mean about the selective usage, right? The same party, same guy was fascist in 2019 and in 2025 not.
Rob,
It's just because you used to be retarded. That's your claim.
well, that's a shorthand way of saying I used to know less and now I know more. What's wrong with that?
When did you...
Why are you just used 2 tweets from me from 6 years apart, and you're trying to make some kind of like psychological profiling about like selective usage. Like, what are we doing here?
The point
People
is,
can learn their lessons. And
the point is
move
the
on.
term is incredibly ambiguous, and you yourself have used it in ambiguous ways, which gets to the real point of this debate. Who gives a shit? Is Trump a racist? Is he an insurrectionist? Is he a fascist? These are all loaded terms that there is ambiguous meanings to that people like you use to justify violence. Can you explain why you tweeted out within 24 hours after the Butler assassination attempt? At what point should we have taken out Hitler? What were you trying to say?
We already had this conversation. I don't know why.
You want to talk about that? I'm happy to. You want to talk about what we talked
Well, I
about?
think the topic of the debate was whether or not Trump's a fascist. But, I mean,
Right, and the point is that the topic itself, which I'm beating you on, that he's not
the same
a fascist. We haven't
conversation
even
where
got
I
to
also did
ultranationalism.
say that America is still a democracy and assassinating politicians is probably not the
Well, that
the
might
wise
be
way
true.
to go.
Mike, so here's what happened. Like, imagine this happens. Where's Destiny? Is he here? This motherfucker's spiraling out of control after the assassination attempt, right? So me, little me, gullible me, is like, man, I'd like to talk to some lefties that, like, I don't know, don't want to kill me and the people I vote for. Wouldn't that be nice in this space? And so the guy that I always look to as the most reasonable, sensible person in that orbit is this man, who is a actually very nice guy, and you can see he's like, doesn't seem like a maniac or anything. So to see him 24 hours after an assassination attempt be like, well, at what point should we have taken out Hitler? I desperately wanted to use my little platform to try to get people on record saying, whoa, can we pull back the lens? Lonerbox agreed to talk to me. You remember what your explanation of me was, why you put that post?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think I said it was a joke.
No,
And also,
you said it was totally disconnected from the assassination attempt. You weren't even thinking about it. It
I don't
just so
think I said
happened
it was
within
totally disconnected. It obviously was to do with the assassination attempt. But then I think you probably recall, or maybe you don't, is that I spent that entire stream talking about the fact that if a country is still a democracy, they're actually, even with Hitler, if you were actually in the time and you didn't know everything that was going to come, it wasn't actually that clear of when would be a good time to assassinate him. I never said that he should have been assassinated during election periods or when there was still a democracy, did I?
No, but
I
this
actually said that if you were going to kill Hitler, it would probably be to the point when it's gotten too late. But that would
You know
probably be
the
after the
message.
Enabling Act when he's
Now,
already
does
completely
anyone
seized power.
Now you could listen to the bull.
Rob can call that bullshit. I feel like that's fine. And not only that, well, I'm not going to endorse political assassinations because I think they're going to create the blowback that causes a martyr complex and galvanizes a movement. I would say that you could look to the excess deaths caused by the Trump administration through the Iran war and PEPFAR and USAID and all that kind of bullshit. And you could say, oh yeah, it would have been morally justified. Because I don't know how many people have been killed in the Iran war, but I know for a fact that it's like fucked up the global economy and there's probably excess deaths there as well. I don't think we've gotten excess death statistics on 2025 and 2026 yet. Excess deaths in Africa 2024 to 2025. Excess deaths in Africa between 2024 and 2025 were driven by sharp surges in infectious disease fatalities, escalating regional conflicts, and climate-related disasters. Cholera surges. Holy shit. It was one of the things that we were taking care of through USAID. Cholera deaths nearly doubled across the continent in 2025 to approximately 7,500 fatalities, up from roughly 3,800, driven by worsening fatality rates and failing water systems. Conflicts and terrorism, deaths in the region like the Sahel surpassed 25,000. I don't think that's related to USAID. Health aid disruptions. Policy freezes and funding cuts to international aid programs like PEPFAR and USAID threaten tens of thousands of projected HIV excess deaths, maternal deaths heading towards 2030. Okay, but I don't want the projections. I want the actual. So, did USAID provide cholera treatments in Africa? Yes, USAID historically provided extensive funding and resources for cholera prevention, water sanitation, hygiene, and medical responses in multiple African countries. So far, we have the doubling of cholera, which, 4,000 people